Michigan is losing a key coach with Lou Esposito off to the NFL. What that means right here on this episode of Locked On Wolverines.
You are Locked On Wolverines, your daily podcast on the Michigan Wolverines, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Friday. We're back and doing it. Locked On Wolverines podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the number one sports podcast network. I'm your man on the ground, Isaiah Hole, publisher of Wolverines Wire through USA Today Sports Media Group. Thank you to all of our everydayers who watch or listen to the show every single day. Also, big thank you for making us your first listen. First, we'll get into the Lou Esposito of it all and him leaving for the Baltimore Ravens, what that means for the Maize and Blue, and then we're going to react to some of the comments that Kyle Whittingham made on Wednesday on Big Ten Network about two of the incoming transfers. And then finally, we're going to stay with the defensive line and discuss the room just a little bit more. Eventually here, we've got a little while till spring ball, right? We got a month and 11 days. But we're eventually going to kind of start doing some position previews, but we'll probably just touch on some of them here and there as we continue to see where they're at. All right. So, unfortunately, I think this might be a little bit sweet to some, and because I have seen some of the chatter here in the off season of people not being as convinced about Lou Esposito, but obviously still, like, there's a reason why he was one of the retentions. I am certainly sad to see him go. And I do think he was every bit the coach that everyone thinks that he, I want to say everyone thought he was before people started like second guessing and questioning things and what have you. I mean, I think the only place where I kind of really questioned him a little bit this last year was the rotations. And the last 2 years, I just felt like the rotations sometimes went a little too deep unnecessarily. And that's on him. But I think he's an excellent developer. He's an excellent recruiter. Ended up finishing, I think, 4th in the country in terms of his recruiting ranking. Obviously did an excellent job being able to bring in the guys that he was able to bring in. Alistair Vallejo, Titan Davis. You expand that to the edge rushers. Carter Meadows, of course, the 5-star. Being able to bring in talent like that. But he gets pilfered by Jesse Minter, who did not have the overlap. It's kind of weird, right? Like former Michigan defensive coordinator taking the defensive line coach for Michigan. You'd be like, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. But nope, Mike Elston was was his guy for his 2 years in Ann Arbor. Elston looks like he's staying in LA. So instead, Minter goes and gets Esposito. And according to a couple different reports out there, it sounded like Michigan made a really strong push to try to get him even after the announcement that he was expected to be hired by the Ravens, but that's all said and done now. He's posted his goodbye. He is on his way out. His son, the Louis Esposito, the Saline, Michigan offensive lineman, has reaffirmed his commitment in the aftermath of all of this. So there's no worries there, at least at the moment. But I think it is disappointing when you lose a guy that was just so well liked and respected. And obviously when a coach like Minter and an organization like the Baltimore Ravens comes calling, that tells you a lot about what his talent is as a coach. So that ends up being a little bit disappointing, just especially like you wanted those holdovers and they got Alford and Esposito to stay, even though my colleague, I don't know what I'd say this to his face. I haven't talked to him, but like this is like, I just had this conversation with my guy Josiah the other day, of like anything I say about someone else, I would say, will only say it publicly or privately to someone else unless I say it to their, only if I would say it to their face. But like, I don't know what EJ Holland's doing with that Tony Alford to, like Miami should go after him thing. I don't know what he's doing there. Okay. But, that's all the acknowledgement I'm going to give that. But nonetheless, being able to keep both Esposito and Alford felt like the right moves. And now you kind of question, where do you go from here if you're Kyle Whittingham? Now, you have Lewis Powell already on staff as the edge rushers coach. He has been a defensive line coach in the past at Utah from 2016 and 18, but then he ended up being more specialized after that. And 2019 forward was the defensive ends edge rushers coach. So I don't know that if you want to change that necessarily. or if you want to promote, like I saw Bryce Marich put out something about promoting David Denham, who was an offseason acquisition 2 years ago or a year ago, I guess you could say. I don't know, but this might be one of those moments if I'm Whittingham where I'd go, like I've been saying for a while, go for that swing for the fences guy. Like identify who you feel is like the top guy at that position group and just go and get him. Like make it one of those, like money's not, that's not an inhibitor here, and just go and get him. Like be like, look, this is what we want to build. This is how we want to do it. Like that is what I would do in this moment, especially because as we're going to talk about the room in segment 3, this is one of the areas that I think everyone's a little bit on edge about, and not in the edge rusher good way, right? That terrible pun. I am sorry. I will leave. It's my show, but I'll leave. Just silence for the rest of the thing. But I think that this is kind of a moment where, and you've seen it work this way from time to time. Because like that's kind of what happened with Esposito coming in. Because if you remember, Sharon Moore hired Greg Scruggs from Wisconsin, which was seen as a good hire. And then he brings in Esposito and it ended up feeling like a better one. Heck, even some of these other years where it was like, yeah, well, Jim Harbaugh wants to retain Brian John Marie and they end up losing him. And then they end up bringing in George Hilo. That felt like a big step up. And I'm not just saying that because George is my guy, but like, I think we can all agree. We all felt a lot better about the linebacker room in 21-22 than we did in 24 and 25, right? So maybe not in terms of personnel, but just in terms of like playing the game and things of that nature. So sometimes that ends up working in your favor. Sometimes it doesn't. I mean, we saw some of the shiftings and things that happened and I end up with Matt Weiss, right? Like in going into 21. So like this would be one of those moments where I think Whittingham, you want to see what he does. And we're going to learn a lot about what kind of program. Because like if he just like, okay, we're just going to promote from within. I feel like that as much as that's like an option that's available to you. I feel like the thing that you want to do now, especially considering I'm sure they're looking internally and saying like, we've got talent, but it's raw and undeveloped in a lot of ways. And there's a lot that we need to kind of get to work out here. Like go and get like, just look and say like, who are our top 3 guys across the sport, pro, college, whatever. Who can we get to come in and end up being a plus here? And when I say a plus, I mean like, what was Lou Esposito, and can we actually find someone better than that? And I know he was really good, and it's hard to necessarily sit there and say like, okay, who's going to be better? But certainly you can find like the essentially the inverse of Jim Harding, who should be a massive improvement when it comes to the offensive line. Go and find that guy on the defensive line. I would say that now is the moment if you're Kyle Whittingham, because it's like, okay, you tried to retain, didn't work out that way. So go to plan B and try to do something that's going to actually be even better than what you were going to have. And I'm interested to see if he's able to do that. All right, we've got we got to talk about Whittingham and his comments about the transfers. I think that there's some interesting stuff there. He only talked about 2 of them, but we're going to read off his quotes and react to those here in just a moment. But before we do, it's the last call for football on FanDuel. One final Sunday, one last kickoff, the final chance to get in on the action before the NFL season officially comes to a close. This is Super Bowl 60, and FanDuel is making sure you're right in the middle of it with a special offer just in time for the biggest game of the year. Whether you're backing the favorite, riding the underdog, or building one last same-game parlay, this is the game everyone's been waiting for. This is where predictions turn into plays, stats turn into storylines, and every snap feels bigger. It's the perfect way to cap off the season and make the Super Bowl even more exciting from kickoff to the final whistle. If you're a new customer, bet just $5 and get $200 in bonus bets if you win. Make it count, because after the Super Bowl, the season is over. Last call for football on FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of Super Bowl 60. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, we're going to continue on here momentarily. But before we do, tax season doesn't have to take over your life. This year, TurboTax is making it easier to just hand things off and move on with your day. With TurboTax Full Service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert, start to finish without stress or guesswork. Instead of spending hours trying to figure out forms, you can meet with a local TurboTax expert in person or connect online. They handle everything from W-2s to self-employed forms and work to get you every single deduction that is possible for you. So you can upload your documents, go about your day, and get updates right in the TurboTax app. It's a huge time saver and gives you real peace of mind knowing an expert is handling it. For a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150 all in. If a TurboTax expert didn't file for you last year, just file by February 28th. Take taxes off your plate and get back to your life. Visit turbotax.com/local to book your appointment today. Thank you for making Locked On Wolverines your first listen. It's time to go deeper, delve deeper, get into the game even more. You can do that by going ad-free, by joining the Everydayer Club, but even more important than ad-free. Let's just face it. Let's just be real about it. The Discord's where it's at. Now, full disclosure, as I've been sick for now 1 full week, I haven't been in there as much as possible. But it's also been a quiet time, so it's kind of worked out. But you'll also note that I'm still answering every question that you might have. I'm dropping intel way more directly than I even do on this show. And you can get that for just $5 a month or $50 a year. I mean, it's a steal. And it's basically, it's the price of your latte every single day. So go to lockedonwolverines.supercast.com or check the show notes to learn more. All right. Interesting. Cliff Kingsbury is joining the Rams. Just seeing that now. Okay. And again, thank you for your patience. I know we've missed some days this week. Going to try to do some weekend ones. I just did not have energy or a voice. I still don't have much energy. Still fighting off whatever this is. Not the most debilitating thing, but it is debilitating. So thank you for sticking with me this week. It's not been a fun week. All right. Kyle Whittingham, Wednesday, it was National Signing Day proper. People kind of forget that because everyone basically signs their classes in December now. But appeared on Big Ten Network, talked a bit about Carter Meadows and Savion Hyder. Nothing really groundbreaking there, just kind of like, yeah, they're really good. I mean, maybe not anything groundbreaking here either, but he was also asked about John Henry Daley and JJ Buchanan, two of the Utah transfers. I can't wait to hear more, just to be able to like have that press conference, and because like there's just so much that we have to learn yet, and it's because we can run through like, okay, what does Jonah Laia bring to the table? All right, what does Chris Bracey bring to the table? Well, Smith Snowden didn't even get mentioned here, but let's start with John Henry Daley. What he had to say about him. He says, John Henry Daley, he's a guy that has an incredible motor. He plays every snap as if it was his last. Tremendously talented young man. He was leading the nation in sacks last year before he went down with an injury. So we feel he probably would have led the nation last year if he'd stayed healthy all year. He's just a relentless throwback type of defensive end. He's just a physical, but he's got great pass rush ability. Kind of, again, like, not just saying this because he's a white guy, but like, it just reminds me like what I've seen out of him, like some mix between Aiden Hutchinson and Chase Winovich. Like, I don't think his ceiling is as high as Aiden Hutchinson. I don't think it's as low. And I'm saying this as like a Chase lover. Like, Chase is my guy. But I think that I don't think his floor is as low either as Chase. So I think that you're going to see, like, if he's healthy, like a guy that's really going to impact the game. And I think it really changed the complexion. And we'll talk again about the defensive line in the next segment, but it could really change the complexion of the defensive line group. No matter who the coaches are, no matter like kind of what they got, because like I harken back to 2022, everyone was actually, let me go to 21. Everyone was concerned in general, right, about the defensive line. You lost what he paid at the draft. You brought back Aiden Hutchinson, but there was no telling after breaking his leg what he was going to be. People will gaslight you into thinking like, oh no, everyone knew he was going to be like an all-pro guy. Like, he wasn't that before. He was good. But no one was looking at him in 19 and 20 before his injury in the third game of the season. Like, yeah, Aiden's just blowing everything up, right? Like everything changed in 2021. And certainly no one was looking at David Ojabo until like week 5. Well, when he had that game against Wisconsin, right? So I think that you know, like you have to understand, like guys can come out of nowhere, or guys, you can look at someone and say like, well, they had a little bit of an ascendance and then they ended up coming back. But like Aiden did what he did after breaking his leg. And really, like no one was talking really about the interior that year. It was really those edge rushers. And then everyone said, well, they're not going to be as good because they lost those two guys. And no, the front wasn't as good with Mike Morris and Ayabi Anoma. As well as the, you know, Mozzie Smith and Chris Jenkins interior. I mean, it was solid, but it wasn't like really, it was that back end group that ended up doing really well. So that said, like, I think that they have a guy that could be that Aiden 2021 guy. And I think that maybe the interior, we'll talk again about that momentarily, but I feel like that is maybe somewhere along the Mozzie, Chris Jenkins trajectory at the moment. So can you find another edge rusher and get solid linebacker play? Because I think that back end is going to be really good. All right, so here's what he had to say about JJ Buchanan. So JJ Buchanan, you came in the University of Utah in the summertime and was not with us in the spring, proceeded to catch a bunch of balls for close to 400 to 500 yards and just got better as the weeks. Why is this just not going? Getting ready. Yeah, no, just, you don't need to get ready. You stay ready. You don't have to get ready, teleprompter. Better as the weeks went by. Let me see if I can get this to work. I just need it to scroll. No, it's not going to. So quit asking. He's a really athletic kid. He's kind of a tweener in a way. He was almost a tight end sized young man, but we kept him at wide receiver. He was about 215 to 220 pounds, but tremendously athletic. Like I said, 40-inch vertical jump. And it really comes in handy when you look at the contested balls up the field. That's where he really excels, at the contested ball. That's, again, those are the types of things Michigan's needed. And we started to see it a bit with Donovan McCulley. Just unfortunately, it seemed like a lot of those contested throws ended up being out of bounds. You know, I still stand by that the one against Nebraska was 100% inbounds. Some of them got overturned, like the Michigan State one got overturned and ended up being considered inbounds. But like there were just a few where it was like, yeah, it was the 50-50 ball. Him and the other guy, he goes up and gets it, comes down with it, and it just ends up being out of bounds. So, I mean, part of that would be coaching, you know, putting JJ Buchanan more in the middle of the field, which I would expect to see more of him there. I mean, you can put him wherever. That's the great thing about a guy with his talent and ability. I think the thing that gets kind of overlooked is young, raw talent. Did what he did with, like, Devin Dampier might be ahead of where Bryce Underwood was, right? But like more talent at the quarterback position, ultimately. And he's a young guy. Like we always talk about year 1 to year 2. We talked about that earlier this week. He's going into year 2 with a quarterback that has like a ceiling that's through the roof. It's like up through the stratosphere. And, you know, like there's multiple targets that Michigan should be able to go after, whether it's him or Marsh or Jamie French, you know, if it's a Kendrick Bell, like this is also a good thing for the wide receiving core, because some of those guys that haven't been able to see the field that often, it's almost what makes you want, like if Anthony Simpson had the big problems like he did going on his way out here, it's almost like, bro, like this would have been a really good time for you to just stay. And like, if you're the best in the room, then stick it out and see what this new coaching staff has to say, right? Like you're going to get a lot of guys that have more opportunities, but the one thing that we know is Micah Simon, wide receivers coach, JJ Buchanan, those things are going to work well in tandem with one another. And to me, he's the most exciting of any of the transfers that they were able to get. And I just don't think it's being talked about enough. All right, we've got to move on. Let's talk a bit about the defensive line room and just kind of where I see it. We'll run through some of the names. How does that work out? We'll do that here in just a moment. But before we do, this is Mazda's moving the game forward for those who show that there's more to the score and more than what's on screen. Just like when Michigan returned to form on Thursday night, avenging the close win over Penn State and Happy Valley. On Thursday night, it was Namari Burnett standing tall, has a career-high 31 points against the Nittany Lions, and he helps push Michigan back into the wins by TKO territory. After, a month and a half of not having those? These types of moments remind us what it really takes to raise the bar. It's the extra work off the court, dialing in every detail, giving it that extra fire and grit, and I'll never quit. We put that same passion into every model highlights make the reel, but what it took to get there makes it count. That there's more to a Mazda because there is more to you. All right, let's finish out talking about the defensive line, edge rushers, defensive tackles alike. I just want to kind of run through some names and some thoughts here. I do think that, incumbent upon them to bring in someone who's going to really continue to develop, right? Like edge rushers, I'm fine with because I think Lewis Powell is shown, right? Like he turned John Henry Daley into what he is, right? So like that's fine. So that gives me a lot of excitement and hope for guys like Cameron Brandt and Dom Nichols and Lugard Adekpayi and there's some other guys that feel like we're just forgetting about that are there, and I say that literally forgetting about them right now. Can a freshman Indietta can he end up being a guy? I don't know. But obviously, you look at Carter Meadows and you say, that's a guy that you hope that they can find a way to get the most out of. Maybe some of those, you look at some outside linebacker types. I don't know that they have the Jayshawn Barham types anymore, but still, I think that there are some people that are in that room that are intriguing, but more so the tackles, because I think that we're to some degree underestimating the at least possibility that it's maybe not flashy, but solid. Now, we've seen Kyle Whittingham constantly put together really good lines, just no matter who the talent is and all of that. Now, it is different going from the Pac-12 and the Big 12 to the Big 10. So, we have to be honest about that. But at the same time, if your starters are like a 3-man rotation between, Jonah Laia, who, very well could play outside as well, Trey Pierce and Enoetta, I mean, that feels solid. Is it spectacular? And I think we've become far too conditioned, especially with the way that things worked, of sitting there looking at it and saying, they need 5 guys. And I'm not talking about burgers. Okay, I'm done with the dumb jokes. I'm done with them. What is wrong with me? No, seriously, I'm asking. No, don't comment. I mean, you can. I'm not going to be in the YouTube comments. Let's just be real. But I think that, that I look at those 3 and you say, they can probably manage whole games with those guys. And you figure there are going to be some players who take steps forward. David Polyapolli has had issues with some injuries and stuff, but he was highly sought after despite being a 3-star for a reason. Travis Moten ended up finishing as a 4-star according to some recruiting services and has this, that wrestling background, was really good at it in a deep, I got corrected. Pretty good conference in high school in Kentucky. You look at Alistair Vallejo and Titan Davis. I mean, can those guys end up being guys who could come in for 10 snaps a game? Just find a niche and be able to take it up, right? I think it's going to depend a lot on summer conditioning for those two, but can they end up being that? And I'm sure I'm missing someone. Manuel Beagle, that's one of them that I'm missing. He was someone that was raved about quite a bit last year, and it wouldn't surprise to see someone like him take that step forward. Again, kind of my point with the wide receivers, the good news is when you have new coaches, it resets the depth chart and it resets the hierarchy. And sometimes that's a good thing. I think running backs room, no, you don't really want to, you don't need to upset it, right? Alfred's been there, but I think, in other position groups, you maybe need that a little bit. And it gives guys a fresh chance to come out and show what can I do? It reminds me in Little League of going from my first year when I was terrible, because I'm terrible at everything when I start and then I get better. I think it's part of my neurodivergence. I mean, I'm just not a natural at many things, but I tend to get really good at whatever. But it was kind of the way my Little League worked in Davisburg, Michigan was it, you had a new team every single year. I'm sure that's how it works a lot of places out here, but I played my first year but the second year I did all the off-season work because I just went and I'm a mimic. So I just went out and just like mimicked guys' batting stances and just did the typical throw up the ball and hit it or throw it up and try to catch it. Like I was just playing, but I got better. I got better at baseball by playing baseball, essentially. And once I got to that new team, the coaches were like, oh, like we've got our guy that we got to put in the 3 or the 4 hole here. And so like that ended up being just due to like essentially fresh eyes as well as the work I put in. So all of these guys that we're like not really talking about have that opportunity. We'll go more into depth as far as the depth chart and all of that in the coming weeks. We don't need to do all that night right here, but I just think that if nothing else, it feels solid, if not unspectacular, is the way I would look at the front. And yes, you would have loved to have gotten a game changer, but there just weren't like a lot of tell me some names in the front 4 that you're looking at and you would say like, yep, that was the gotta have them guy. I can see linebackers where people looked at it and said, Rasheem Biles, who Michigan wasn't quite as high on as I think a lot of us thought, or Cade Uluave, who Michigan was as high on as we all thought. So like they're like, yeah, okay. Those ended up being guys that we all kind of circled and said that could end up being really, really great. And it didn't work out that way. Defensive line, I think that I'm not really seeing some of those impact people. Now, certainly we're going to look in retrospect once the season comes and say some of those guys probably were that. But anyhow, all right, that's going to do it. I would love to hopefully make up a show or 2 over the weekend. I think part of it's going to depend on if there's new news to talk about. We will try to figure out something. Obviously, we can talk about the Ohio State game after the fact. That is a possibility on Sunday. Obviously, I also need some rest so we can come back strong. So I'm not going to promise. It's funny. I think when I promise shows over the weekend, they don't happen. When I don't, they do. So I'm just going to say we'll play them by ear, but we will try to make up the 2 we missed this week due to my illness, if possible. So anyway, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. We'll talk to you again soon. Peace.